Hello everybody, this is Nancy from the summer weekday batch. I know in my email last night I said I probably wouldn't be able to do a video before Saturday or Sunday or even Monday, but I've pretty much finished part one of the homework, so I thought I'd show you what I did real quick. And we're coming to the point now where it's very complex, so unless someone is showing you line by line by line, it's if you don't have what came before, in other words, if you are not understanding what we've done up until this point, you can have a really hard time doing assignments such as these. So all I can tell you is try and just really crunch in there and learn as much as you can. Go back to the previous lectures and just practice, because otherwise a lot of what I'm going to say here is going to go over your head. And I should also tell you is make sure that if you want to have a recording of the class, that you yourself record the class and do not depend upon anybody else. Not me, not anybody else, because I can get sick, or my car can break down, or my software can crash, or like happened with Wednesday night's class, the microphones can foul up so that you've got this horrible echo and it's very hard to listen to. Take responsibility for everything that you do and do not leave your future in the hands of another person. I enjoy helping and I'm glad to help and share videos and all that stuff, but never assume that Nancy or anybody else is going to take on the responsibility for you making sure you're learning what you're learning, okay? So to get to the lesson today, the number one was to create a test script that loops 5 times. We have to choose a website other than the ones we've been using in class. We have to input variables, and at least 2 data values must be different for each iteration. Have to include 3 verification points, which are if statements, and capture at least 1 value that's changing, which is get RO property. Each time a value is captured, you have to present it in the output pane of UFT, which is the print. And F and G. Right now I am ignoring F and G. I have rewatched the major parts of both Tuesday and Wednesday's classes from this week 2 times each, fast forwarding through the slow stuff, and I haven't found how I'm supposed to do presenting passed or failed using scripting. So what I did is I just typed in this is a pass and this is a fail of this iteration. So I just did it manually, and I do not know if that's what Jay wants. And until somebody can help me with that, or I can bug Jay about it, or I can, have a magical brain gain and figure it out, I am not worrying about F and G. So you won't get that from me. All right, so let's get started. I shared a script with you. I shared a website with you before, which was called What's the Cost? And it is a debt snowball thing. And if you want to use it for this lesson, you're more than welcome to. I found a couple of other websites with debt snowball calculators, so I'm using them this week because, if it works, use it. So the website that I'm using is called interestgrows.com/snowball.php. And just like the other one from last week, it's very simple. Doesn't have pop-ups, doesn't have a bunch of garbage hopping up in your face or a lot of dynamic content, so it is pretty easy to get started with. Obviously, when you come to the page, it doesn't really have enough to deal with, so you have to add a couple of debts. Now, last week, because we were not doing quite so much and we weren't doing a lot of variables, a lot of iterations actually, I did 5 debts. But on this one, I only am doing 3, so we're going to ignore these. So let's take a look at what I did. I will not be building a script from scratch because today I have a whole bunch of stuff to do which does not involve being in front of a computer. So I'm going to show you what I have, and I'm hoping that by verbally showing you everything that I have, you'll understand. Okay, so this is my script. All together, we're right at about a little over 100 lines. And I'm going to tell you the logic behind everything that I did. And then I would recommend that you go back and watch the previous class videos. which is what I did. And literally, I had those videos playing while I was working on the script. Some of this stuff we know, very simple. First thing, you start with option explicit. That's pretty much always option explicit. Make sure we don't spell anything wrong. And then we have to declare everything. So we have to declare every single variable that we're going to do, which is pretty simple. You can do it as you go, or what I started with, because I was just learning and it was kind of awkward, I would go ahead and do object spy and get all of this first, get the basic of the script first, and then I would start fiddling with adding all of the variables. So that's a way, if you just start by grabbing everything with object spy and not put variables here, you just put the regular numbers here and you run it, make sure that script works first, and then you can start adding variables. When you get more confident and more comfortable, and you know what you're going to be using as your variables, then you can when you're grabbing it in object spy, you can go my browser, web edit, grab all the stuff, set, and then you can type in amount to pay, knowing that you're going to put a number in up here. But you do it however you can do it to get it right. Okay, so we'll go from the top down one time all the way through, and then I'll try and break it down. Option explicit. Dim my browser, amount to pay, first loan, first rate, first min, first bal, all this stuff doesn't matter as long as I know what it is and where it goes and what it identifies. If you're going to dim on more than one line, make sure you do not have a comma here or it will not work, and make sure you do not have a comma here. The usual stuff, system util close process by name. I did not use variables for these. System util.run iexport.exe and the website. Make sure you put a comma here. I oftentimes forget it and it will not run. Okay, and then I started writing out my variables. This stuff typed up here is the exact same thing as this stuff typed here. So we are going to be doing iterations, but our basic starting point will be here. Some of my stuff will change and some will not. We're not using Excel and we are not using data tables on this first one, so we're going to be using variables from inside the script using the addition function as Jay showed us. So my initial stuff is, okay, well, if we look here on our website, the first thing we have is how much money do you have each month to throw towards these loans. So I said that's going to be my amount to pay. That's $1,000. Then we have to name the loan, car loan, and then we have to have an interest rate. I set it as 5.0. The minimum payment $200, and what the balance is on that loan, $5,000. So I did that with each one. I have 1, 2, 3. Ignore these; they're going to go away when I run the script. And that's it. Those are all my first major variables, and they have to be declared up here. So that goes right up to here, to third balance, okay? And then one thing I noticed when I was building the script is you have to add a det by clicking and by clicking. And since I was running this 5 times, it was going click, 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 and then on the next iteration it'd go click, click. And it would mess everything up, because once it did those 2 extra spaces, it would no longer calculate. And so my script was failing. So I said, I need to just start with the clear website. Where is it? And I need to add a det only 2 times. I do not need this to run through the iterations, because then it's going to keep adding these det boxes and it's going to mess up my script. So I said, well, that means that that click needs to be outside the loop. And remember, we learned how to take this here, make class browser creation time title, page, make class page creation time title, and rename it as a variable my browser, so that we don't have to type this every single time or cut and paste, because it's a pain in the tushy. So that has to happen up here before I use it, right? But you only have to do it once. So I said set my browser equals browser, etc., etc., etc. Obviously, you have to declare it up here. Where did I put it? There it is, my browser, right up here, the very first thing. You have to declare that in your as a variable, and then I said, I'm on a space here, and then I said, now my browser, every time, instead of having to write this, we just write this. So I said, my first thing I'm going to do in Object Spy is I grab that box to click to add a loan, and I added 2 because I only want a total of 3 debts. So I started with the blank website, and then I said click, click. I grabbed this add a debt button in Object Spy, and I said click on that twice, and then that will never happen again throughout the script because it is outside the loop, because the loop goes here. A lot of stuff is going to be memorizing syntax, and right here it's very simple syntax. For I stands for iteration, which means how many times we're going to do something, equals 1 to 5. So we're going to have a total of 5 iterations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's not going to change. Now, while you are practicing, you can set this to 1 to 1 or 1 to 2 so that you don't have to, while you're practicing and filling everything in, so you don't have the script running 5 times every single time. Just remember to change it back to 5 before you turn it in. All right, now, Jay said we have to have at least 2 data values different for each iteration. So I went ahead and made all of my numerical stuff change. Obviously, we're working within the script. We're not using Excel or data tables, so we're not going to be able to do car loan plus 1 or Visa card plus 1 or Amex plus 1, so we're going to ignore those. So I took my amount to pay, started at 1,000, and then I added 100 plus 100. My interest rate, for each one, I have first rate, second rate, third rate, so I have to put each of those in here. First rate, second rate, third rate. I increase them by whatever. At this one, I did them all the same, 1.5%. So my interest rate is going to change, increase by 1.5% on every iteration. And then my minimum payments, they're different, which is no big deal. I had it here for $250, $100, and I just said, well, we're going to increase the first one by 50, the second by 25, third by 20. Not a big deal. You can put whatever numbers you think sound reasonable. We are now inside the loop, and we also have to do a print statement. We have to say what everything is. So I didn't do anything with amount to pay. I didn't do a print statement for that because I don't have to. You know, he said do 3 or whatever. I can do print amount to pay. This is the amount to throw at the debt each month. So I can just go up here and go print. And I always like to kind of leave a space between things. Whoops. I always like to leave a space between things. It's print AMT to PAY and then anytime we concatenate it, when we are going to add something to it, we have to start with a quotation mark. Leave a space so things are not mashed together. This is the amount available to pay towards the debt item. Okay, so I just added that. It's no big deal. And because these are variables, it will change with each iteration. So what you get as your output down here will change each time because you're using these variables that are going to be increasing by this amount each time. Alright, so you do not have to have the print screen here. You can have it down towards the bottom. I just put it in here because it's easy for me to see, you know, to make sure I'm spelling it right, so everything's close to each other. I know I'm spelling everything correctly. I use cut and paste. And then here's the script. By this time, I built this stuff second, this stuff first. So when I'm building a script, when I'm still trying to learn, the first thing I do is option explicit, system util. I don't even put in my variables yet. I just go ahead down here and I grab this stuff using Object Spy. Okay? And then I start adding in all the stuff I need to make it work correctly, which is, well, I don't want to be typing in MIC class browser creation time, title, blah, 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 so I'm going to set my browser, and then I had to add it here. And then I add what I need to run the script the first time to make this part from here to here to make sure that part works before I start adding in anything else. Then I go back and start adding in these variables, which means when I first grab this using Object Spy, I'm not going to use variables here. I'm just going to say $1,000, home loan, 2.5%, $5,000, $2,000, that sort of thing. Okay, and then I'm going to go back and take those numbers out and replace them with variables. When you get better and you know better, you're not going to need to do that. Or you're not going to want to do that because you're going to save time by just doing your variables right away because you know it. And you say, I'm not going to screw it up. I know what I'm doing. But if you start, just test this part of the script first. If it runs cleanly, then you start adding everything else. Okay, so this is pretty basic right here. If your script ended at this point, that would be not that complicated. It's mostly just plugging stuff in, right? Okay, so then we have to include 3 verification points. So since I'm working down from the top, I'm going to do this a little bit out of order. And I don't leave a lot of comments in my script because I find it breaks everything up and makes it look not tidy. So if I need to remind myself something, I might put it in as a comment and then take it out later. This one, if I want the person who's grading the script to know that I understand what I'm doing, then I will put a comment in for my point, for myself and for the person who's grading to show, look, I know what I'm doing. So I said, we want to get the OR property, but I want to make sure it's inside the loop because the value will change with each iteration and I want to be sure to capture each value. So what I did is I got a result. When you calculate the snowball, you get a result, and I captured that result. And that's what this is. So the same thing you use Object Spy. Let me just do this real quick. You use Object Spy, and then you grab it, you move here, and then I went down and I captured the number that resulted from calculating the snowball. So I went and captured it, and just like usual, I found the elements here. And because that button, because the result didn't have a name and it didn't have any good stuff to grab from, I had to use an index number, and I just guessed that it would be index 0 because it was the first of that type of data on the page, and I was right, thank God. So this is, I uniquely identified it, get RO property, and I said I want to take the inner text. Now the inner text is how much money you're going to end up spending all together. And that obviously will change with each iteration because the amount of money and my interest rate that I'm paying are all changing every iteration. So that's why you just put inner text and not a hard print number. And then I just did a print snowball, and then obviously I named it snowball because that's what the website calls it when you add all these debts together. What did I have to do? I had to go up here and add snowball as a variable, right? Otherwise it's not going to work. So I said the snowball equals whatever we're capturing in here. And I said print snowball, and then tag on this information at the end of it. This is the total paid with snowballing. And then I said, because I didn't understand what to do with F and G, right now I just said this is the end of iteration, whatever, and then this iteration passed. I just said it's passed because I'm looking at it and it's passed. I didn't code anything in here to make it pop up with a message that's saying passed. I may be wrong on that, and if somebody teaches me how to do it, I will change it before I turn it in. And then I just said wait 5 seconds, give everything a chance to settle down, and then next. What are we going to do in the next? We're going to go back up here, and then we're going to run through all this stuff with the next set of numbers. And then next, we're going to go back up here. We're going to do that 5 times. And then we had to grab verification points using if statements. And I said, you know what, I'm going to have a message box with that, and I don't want to mess with the message box popping up through each iteration. What am I going to do? I'm going to put my verification points outside the loop. Because obviously if the iteration is going to run one time, if it's going to run 5 times, then I know I'm in the right place. So I'm just going to confirm one time that I'm in the right place and then let it go. So that's why I put it here, to let the instructor know, the grader know, that I know what I'm doing and I did it on purpose. So we're done with the loop. Everything run 5 times. And then this is going to run exactly once. So I said, if my browser, I found something on the page, I don't even remember what, but I just said, if this thing exists, if this button exists, then I'm in the right place. If that button exists, then I'm in the right place. If this line exists, then I'm in the right place. We had to have 3 verification points. Doesn't matter what they are, but I just chose things that don't change. So I did my verification points. I said, if that button or text or whatever exists, then I'm going to get a message box that says you're in the right place. But I figured you're in the right place is extremely boring. So I said, if I did it correctly and I'm in the right place, I'm going to have a message box that pops up and says, Nancy gets a fancy Starbucks frappe, or frappe, I don't know how you pronounce that. Otherwise, else, if I screwed up and I'm not on the right page, Nancy gets bubkus, which means nothing. That's my first verification point. And if. This is syntax. If, then the stuff in here, message box, else message box. You can do print, else print, but I just like message box. And if. Next one, if, then message box, else message box. And if, then message box, else message box, and if. So if I did everything correctly, it says Nancy gets a fancy Starbucks frappe. If I'm not in the right place with this particular thing, if it doesn't exist on the page, then I don't get anything. Move on to the next verification point. If this thing here exists on the page, then I get a donut to go with my frappe. If this does not exist on the page, then I just get a dry crust of bread. Then the third and final verification point. That's all this is. It's like a checkpoint in regular descriptive programming without variables and fancy stuff. So it's like a checkpoint. If I'm in the right place, I think that was the button. If that button exists, then my frappe and donut won't have any calories. Otherwise, Nancy is sad. And if. And that is the end of my script. Am I correct in putting this outside the loop so it only comes up one time? I do not know. I will find out when it is graded. Remember, I sat in the same lecture you did. I am not ahead of you. I have not taken this course before. So I'm taking a little artistic license and using some logic and making it interesting and fun for myself. So this is the entire script, with the caveat that F and G on part 1 I may be totally missing the boat on, and I will find out over the weekend, and by the time it's time to turn it in, I'll either know or I won't know. So let's go ahead and run this script. And the first thing you want to do, design, check your syntax first and foremost. Make sure you didn't make any, just regular mistakes. The syntax is valid. Close that. View output. And I have nothing in my output because I cleared everything out and I haven't run anything yet. If you have something down here, clear it out using the X, and then just slide it down. Wait until this little up and down arrow thing comes, and then slide it down out of the way. Alrighty. I'm gonna make this so that when it pops up, it's smaller so that I can still see this page, because eventually, if I did it right, I'm gonna have these message boxes and then I'm going to have to click on them, so I don't want this totally in the way. So I'm going to move that so that it runs over here. Okay, so we're clear. I'm not going to save this because I changed one or two things and I've already saved it to a Word document, so I'm not going to save it, but you want to save all your work as you go. However, if you are going to make a very major change that you think might screw up the entire script, save it as something else so you can play with it, work on it, change it however you like, but you don't screw up what you know you have correct so far. I'll say that again. If you have, like, you've got a lot of work in here and you have it saved, and then you're thinking, ugh, did I do that correctly? Let me change something. And then you're going to make a fairly major change. Save that as something else so that if that major change screws everything up, you can just trash it and then grab your good copy and keep working on it. Don't mess up everything because you will cry. All right, let's take our run and run. I'll be really messed up if this doesn't work because this is what I'm turning in. All right, as you see, because I put the added det outside the loop, it only added 2 dets. If I had done it inside the loop, every time it added an iteration, well, the second time it would add 2 more boxes and then it would get hung up. And then the snowball results wouldn't show up. And snowballing saves you 878.11. Snowballing saves you 796.12. So we see it is changing. This is that dynamic number. So I know it's calculating 779.36, so that's changing again. Oh, there's my pop-up message. Nancy gets a fancy Starbucks frappe. Nancy gets a donut to go with her frappe. Nancy's frappe and donut won't have any calories. Looks like I am a happy camper. And you're not going to get any pass-fail results over here, but I do just like to look at it because I'm just amazed. I said, oh my gosh, look at that. I did that. I put all that information in there. And it's pretty amazing when you think that we do that. We're building this, and then think of the hundreds and hundreds and thousands of lines of scripting and code and how complex it can get. We're doing pretty good stuff here. So my script ran correctly. My option explicit was here. I declared all my variables, including the I for your loop, including my browser when you're changing that browser MIT class browser page MIT class page, including my snowball here, which was the get RO property. So always make sure you declare all your variables and you spell them correctly all the way through. Remember, checking syntax will not make sure that you have all your variables spelled correctly. So if you mess up, you'll have to figure it. Things that people screw up on quite often, it's the little details that will get you. Don't have a comma at the end of the line. Make sure you have a comma between your browser and your website name. Make sure that you have quotation marks where you're supposed to, and don't have quotation marks where you're not supposed to. Make sure that when you're concatenating, make a little space here right after your quotation marks so things don't get mashed together. What else? Make sure when you're grabbing stuff from Object Spy that you're using the correct terminology. Sometimes it's going to be set, sometimes it's going to be select, other times it's going to be click. Make sure that you're doing that correctly. Make sure you're grabbing enough information, and at very least 2, 3 is better, as long as they're not the exact same thing. So for instance, if the name was total pay and then the HTML tag was total pay, you use one or the other but not both. So just make sure that your values here and here are not identical, because then it's not really a different element. If you do have to do an index number, good luck, it's kind of guesswork. If you feel like something should be working, or maybe it worked on one iteration and not the second iteration, you might need to throw a wait time in after you click a button or submit something, because sometimes it takes a second for information to load, to update. So when in doubt, throw in a wait time and see if that helps. Just throw in 5 seconds. Remember that if you want something to be inside the loop, it has to be between the 4 and the next. If you only want it to happen once, it has to be outside the loop. That's a logical decision that you make. And that's the only way I could get my script to run. Otherwise, it was hanging up on the second iteration because it threw in 2 more boxes that didn't have anything in them. Make sure you get down here with your if, make sure you have declared that variable, my browser. Exists, make sure you spell it correctly. It's exists, not exists. Use your correct syntax: if, then, else, and if. And then you can do message box or you can do print, doesn't matter. That is it. I think that's pretty much the gist of it. While you are practicing between runs, go ahead and clear that out so you just don't get a whole mess of stuff in the way. And breathe. You can do it. The videos are there. I should have the videos on Dropbox if you need. The second video for Wednesday night is kind of a mess because I have that silly echo going on, but we should have the videos up on the forum sometime this afternoon. Usually they get them on Friday afternoon, so you can watch directly from there. And I think that's it. This is a long enough video. It's going on for, what, 30 minutes or so. This is the gist of it. I know it's hard to find a good website, but you want to use this one, but I'm going to turn mine in first, so if yours looks exactly like mine, you know they're going to say, oh, look at that, she copied, or he copied. So, you know, I would say it is better for everybody to choose his own website. It is not always possible because there's a lot of websites out there that you can't get good information on. Just make sure that you do your own thing and, you know, do your own numbers and all that stuff. Work at it and just don't give up. Okay, that's the first part of the homework. Might have time for another video today or tomorrow. We shall see, but if not, I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.